I was a huge beneficiary of being in a time where there was zero club volleyball, zero junior volleyball, playing in tournaments with my dad starting at 11, 12. No opponent across the net wanted to go home or back to his friends and say he lost to a 12-year-old kid. And so they were relentless on me. Our brain just comes up with thoughts. I can have some negative thoughts about myself that if I said it to you or to a friend, you wouldn't talk to me for a long time. Karch, you suck. You can't put a ball away. How many thousands of hours have I trained this skill? It's not that I can just squeeze so hard that they don't come up. It's how we recover from those thoughts. This is the Olympics. There are 25 million people. We have to be good, we have to qualify, and we have to contend for a medal, and that's how it's going to be on TV.
Hi, everyone. So today's interview with Karch was one that I have to admit, I didn't realize. I felt really nervous because he means so much. So today's episode is it's a special one for me. I sit down with Karch, and while yes, he is one of the greatest volleyball players, men's volleyball players of all times, this conversation goes way beyond sport because athletics is always going to be only one small part. And we talk about how to lead when the pressure is high. We all feel a lot of pressure, how to be a great teammate, and why mastering your mindset might be the most important skill of all. Karch opens up about his childhood. He was even coached by his really intense Hungarian father. And now how losing, especially early, shaped him into someone who could rise in the biggest moments. I saw him rise so many times in so many big moments. So whether you're a coach or a parent, an athlete, or just someone who wants to show up better in your life and relationships, Karch offers insights that will stick with you long after this episode ends. Welcome to the Gabby Reece Show. Let's go. So Karch, I have to tell you, I've interviewed a lot of people, and I was especially excited and also, I wouldn't say nervous, but maybe more on my game because I think you bring that out in people. Not only, obviously, you mean a lot to me for different reasons because of volleyball and the standard of excellence that you've always set. But you have a way of just the way you live and the way you've been that you sort of bring out this idea of, hey, we're all going to be our best, without even saying anything. Do you know you have this impact on people?
I'm not sure I've heard it quite phrased or articulated that way, but I do hope to have that kind of impact. The sign of a really, really good volleyball player, one of the hallmarks is somebody who raises the level of the people around them. That's the way the team can be its best. And almost everything we do in life is in teams. And so if you can raise me today and I can raise you, great. But yeah, pursuing mastery, pursuing excellence, and pursuing not just individual, but more importantly, like team mastery and excellence.
Yeah, I always love the magic of 1 and 1 can equal 3.
Yes, we are absolutely. I guess another way of saying is I'd love to have a team feel like there are 8 people on our side of the net instead of 6, or 3 instead of 2 on each side. So adding up to more is, the way I would phrase it is, and I get goosebumps a lot over goofy little things. So, but it's exciting and really meaningful. So lots of people have played lots of team sports over the course of growing up and through their lives. I think everybody has been on teams that add up to about the sum of their parts. Pretty good.
Yeah.
So everybody's probably been on a team that added up to a lot less than the sum of their parts. That is memorable in a negative way. It's like, dang, we really fell short. And we could have been so much more. I don't know. Could be drama, could be whatever. Stuff came up and we added up to less. And those are really disappointing seasons. Yeah. And then the really special seasons are the ones where we add up to way more. And we're gritty and we're feisty and we never give up and we keep moving forward. And everybody that we play is just shocked at the power that the group harnesses.
Yeah, I always love the notion of attributes versus skills, and when you get that team where all the attributes can complement each other, and then the skills and the practice, and I want to start the conversation just by setting the table a little bit so people get a sense of your background. Obviously, to tell your story is to talk about your dad, who came from Hungary, was loved volleyball and soccer, and had to basically flee Hungary,
Yeah.
and made his way to the U.S. Met your mom in Michigan, and then you moved to California when you're, I think, about what, 6 years old.
They met at University of Michigan, and so I was born in Michigan and grew up most of my time in Michigan, but we moved out to Santa Barbara just for 1 year. Everybody coming out of medical school, including my dad, they do 1 year of internship somewhere, and they were scouring places to do internship, and I think they looked at some places in Los Angeles, and then they were thinking of San Francisco, and they were driving up, and they were like, holy crap, what is this Santa Barbara place?
Yeah.
Stopped, made a beeline to the cottage hospital there, the first hospital off the little freeway. And they're like, oh, yeah, we're going to apply here. And so we lived there for a year, back to Michigan for 3 years, and then back to various parts of California.
And your dad notoriously is an intense person in the pursuit of, every ball greatness, and, started bumping around with you at this time, very young, and then started playing with you or having you play with friends of his at around 11.
Yeah, actually, first time on a court was 9. With a player who was better than him. He wanted me to play with his friend who was the best player as we were around that morning against him. Just pick up games at East Beach, one of the great places in the world to play beach volleyball, one of the beautiful spots. And then eventually we were reading an article, a very rare article in Sports Illustrated about volleyball, and it mentioned people like Larry Rundle and Dane Holtzman. And I think the article, I have it somewhere, but I think the article mentioned that Dane Holtzman had set the record for being the youngest ever to play an adult beach volleyball tournament at 11. And so we decided, that'd be kind of fun to tie that record. So we entered, and that was the first of 4 years of playing together on in the lowest ranks, novice tournaments and B tournaments up and down the coast of Southern California.
You have 2 sisters.
Yes.
And I couldn't help but wonder how much of this is the way you were born, you, Karch, and then coupled with the environment that your dad created. And it's interesting because you're a parent and you're a coach. How much do you think this is, just you, Karch, being put in that right environment? Because there's traits that you have that I don't think you can teach.
When you say this,
the notion of the focus, you've won gold medals in indoor and in beach. You have records for winning in beach. You competed until your 40s. Watching you play was always fascinating, being I'm a person who fell into the game. You've been brought along into the game your whole life. And watching somebody who has this not only supreme focus and competitiveness, but I remember watching you thinking, Karch is not going to make a mistake. There was something in you, like especially on serve receive, I'd see you and I'd think you're in a tight spot and you think he's not going to be the one to make a mistake. It is a fascinating thing to observe because not a lot of people have that. Do you know that the difference? Did you not?
So I think there's no clear answer on that. I think certainly a big part of it is learning from my dad and his intensity and his passion, and even at his recreational or lower level, he was demanding a lot out of himself, demanding a lot out of his partner, when he would play. He was a doctor for many, many years in Santa Barbara. Most of his patients didn't know that he had his bathing suit on under his suit. He'd sprint down, and they had a really cool thing at East Beach in Santa Barbara, kind of a nooner's agreement where anybody who worked, when they showed up, it doesn't matter if you were the best. It didn't matter if you were like Phil Dahlhauser and Todd Rogers or whoever. You had to, on these courts, you had to relinquish the court and let the guys have the working people have it from noon to like 1:15, and they could sprint down, get their games in, shower, and get back to work. And so even when he was doing that, people would say you would hear him before you saw him because he would be imploring himself and his partner, go get that ball, rise and think. And he just had all these funny sayings. Actually, I think I have it on my phone. I was thinking of him. Where was I? I was in the Colorado Springs airport the other day, coming back from Colorado Springs from there it is. He used to say "rise and think" a lot, but in his with his Hungarian accent, "Rise and think, Karch, rise and hit that ball." So I thought of him because I came across a photo that said "rise and fly."
Yeah, there you go. That says it all.
The coffee shop was trying to get him going. So. Really intense player, never reached the top levels of the game, but always was pursuing his best, whatever level that was. And so you put that all together, and then living in Santa Barbara, being around all these amazing players, and the world's best beach volleyball players would come in town once a year for the Santa Barbara Open. And my friends and I would just ogle and be fascinated by that. There was no YouTube, there was no volleyball on TV, but we would at least get to see it. If I had stayed in Ann Arbor, I would never have seen how amazing it could be.
Yeah.
And so it's an amalgamation of things that kind of put an environment around me that allowed me to pursue my best and to try to be a part of great teams.
And I've heard you tell stories about, as a young boy, seeing this high level, but also getting to play with people like this. So the fact that you weren't playing with a bunch of kids your age, you were playing with men, there was never the tone that, well, you're a boy, so it's okay. It's like, no, that's what we're doing.
It was, to me, I think, a huge blessing. A couple of things three things growing up. Number one, not having devices and social media, because that can draw anybody's attention away. And number two, not having video games, especially little boys. And I have a little boy in me. I could easily find myself lost in that for hours at a time. But I grew up at a time instead where everybody's mom said, go outside and you're not back in the house until dinner time. And just kids are figuring it out, unstructured play all over. And then I also think I was a huge beneficiary of being in a time where there was zero club volleyball, zero junior volleyball. So instead of being an 11-year-old and trying to figure out how to play the game and watching other 11-year-olds who are also floundering, I was instead seeing men and seeing these great examples of how to do it right. The other benefit was playing in tournaments with my dad, starting at 11, 12. No opponent across the net wanted to, getting goosebumps again, wanted to go home or back to his friends and say he lost to a 12-year-old kid. And so they were relentless on me. In beach volleyball, if you and I are a pair and I'm considered the weaker partner, then all they do is give me the ball, first contact, you set me, I attack. But they were relentless. Like, they did not let up at all. They were as hard on me as they could be. That was the best thing for me possible. And it made me better because they did not nobody wanted to lose to some scrawny little punky kid.
Yeah. Was your tendency to ever feel sorry for yourself, or you just thought, oh, okay, this is a challenge and I'm going to do my best to meet the challenge?
That's a good question. There are people, I think there's a range of responses to that challenge.
Sure.
And for whatever reason, I can't explain it, but my response was, wow, this is so cool. They're coming at me with their best. I don't know if I'll be able to withstand that, but it sure is fun trying.
It's so funny because I think to watch you, I saw you only as an adult. I'm a little bit younger than you. And so, only a few people got to really watch you go through that process. The voice, Karch's voice inside his head as a 12-year-old, oh, this is fun. This is a challenge. Was that voice the same voice as the 30-year-old, highly accomplished, already a few gold medals Karch, that the pressure for you was more of, oh, this is a really fun challenge that I get to meet, or the notion of pressure? What was always your relationship with that?
First, I remember the very first tournament we played. I was 11. We played at Big Corona Del Mar. And there's goosebumps again. 3 so far. We double elimination tournament. That's traditional in beach volleyball. Mm-hmm. We lost both games, but one was like 15-12 and the other was like 16-14. In my first tournament with my dad, just novice, lowest level. But adults don't want to lose to an 11-year-old kid. Mm-hmm. And so it was so incredibly empowering. Like, they are throwing their best at me and we almost beat them. Mm-hmm. And I did withstand the barrage that was coming at me, the heaviness or responsibility of me having to carry the load. And so that to me was so igniting. Like, even as an 11-year-old kid, my dad gave me this beautiful gift of you've raised kids, we've raised kids. It is really hard for young girls, young boys to grow up to be good women and good men. Mm. And so on this one tiny sliver of life, I got this great gift of being able to already stand toe to toe with grown men. Not in almost any other area, but in beach volleyball. And that was a huge gift for me in this struggle to grow to be a good adult. And so that was really, really empowering in that sense. The challenge and also just being able to stand toe to toe. I had a guy, I run into him every once in a great while, and he still tells his friends that he was undefeated against me. He's
Sure.
2-0. And then
because you were 6.
And he said because Karch was 12. So
right.
He tells his friends that after the fact. So then your question touched on early and then like at 30, and there's different challenges.
Well, because when you're the guy to beat,
yes.
Everybody they have nothing to lose because they're supposed to lose. So their level, they're then in a way, it's so interesting to watch athletes actually play their best against the best because one, they don't have the fear of losing because they're expected to lose.
Yeah.
So you're the one who has something to lose, and so in this pretend way, right? Like not all this is made up stories that we make up.
Inside here.
Correct. So I'm just wondering if in that moment when you sort of are the person to beat, does the chatter change or it's exactly the same? Hey, one ball at a time, 5 to 7 seconds as hard as I can. Or does it change? Like I shouldn't lose to this guy. They're qualifiers or whatever narratives that we create.
That's a question that kind of pierces right. It goes right to the heart of it. I work really hard to manage or keep expectations of results to a minimum. So I got to be a part of a lot of great results, winning lots and lots of tournaments, lots and lots of matches. But I had a great lesson in that, like when I got to play with a great bunch of guys, USA, LA 84, and we won the gold medal.
Yeah.
Our expectations for that, goosebumps again, 4th, We were hoping to win some kind of a medal. We actually won a gold medal. The tournament was weakened because there was a boycott. The world's number one team wasn't there, the Soviet Union, but still, it was an amazing accomplishment. And we won, and a lot of us just were walking around for the next 2 months feeling like we weren't even touching the ground. It was just the most amazing, euphoric feeling to have won a gold medal when our hope and maybe expectation was to just finish high. 4 years later, now we're the number one team in the world for most of that time, took over for the Soviets. And it was another amazing rush to win that. But probably the number one thing I felt was relief, because it was more, we're number one, we have to win. Anything less is a failure, is a defeat. Like, to think a silver medal would be a failure. That's not a failure, but it's how we frame things in our mind. And so I found that having really high and clear expectations of results robbed me of a couple things. Number one, just the joy of any result. It sucked a little of the joy out of that, as amazing as a gold medal is. And I also think that when you expect something to happen, a certain result, at least for me, that I can't squeeze quite as much hard work and effort out of myself. Because if I think, it's going to happen, we're going to win, versus approaching it as I don't know what's going to happen, and I'm going to try to have the most impact on this that I can. I don't have complete control over the scoreboard. And so I reframed it to, I'd go to every beach tournament, and we won a lot of them, but I'd look at the board and like, oh my God, there are a lot of good teams here. This is going to be really tough. So we're just going to focus on that first one on the bracket. It might be a qualifier team, but anybody can play really loose against the number one seed, number two seed, whatever, and just take it one play at a time, and not go into the tournament thinking we're going to win every match, we're going to win the final, and we're going to win this tournament.
Yeah. What if in a scenario, just share with people how many beach tournaments you won? 100 and how many? 40?
148.
Yeah. So when you say you won a lot, you won years and years and years and years. And people can have, two reactions to that. They can get complacent or they can pressure out, right, about that. So from 84 to 88, would you say 88, when you realized, even though you guys won the gold as an indoor team that was together all the time and very intense, your crew was, it's sort of those perfect moments where all these personalities come together and nobody's offended that they're yelling at each other and you guys are going hard and practicing hard. Was there a reframing for you as an athlete? So you were 27, 28, something like that. You bolted on then this idea of, okay, one team, one game, 1 point at a time. That got reinforced, you think, after 88?
I think so. As I got into the early 90s, it was just, I just fall in this, I decided to put myself in this one school. The other school is, if you want to win an Olympic gold medal, an NCAA championship, a Super Bowl, you have to believe that it's going to happen.
Right.
And you have to know that it's going to happen. But if you know that it's going to happen, why even play the game? To me. And so I want to go in with an uncertainty, and to not be certain about that outcome. I can have a hope of a result. I can also know that we're capable of that result. But I don't know. We have to play the game. I don't know. Anything can happen. We can win, we can lose. It can be close. It can be a blowout. And so I'm going to try to have as much influence on that, my teammates and I. And I, again, find that I get more joy when we do get the result, and I squeeze more effort out of myself, not being unsure of the outcome.
But what's interesting for me when I hear that is usually the other school dominates that voice. Know it, see it already, all this stuff. But you've had the ability to somehow not know, but in your preparation, I would imagine it it was happening in practice. Do you think, because for me, what I hear is somebody who could step on the court in this weird mix of I don't know, but I'm very confident because of my preparation and my practice, and that I know I'm going to go for every single ball. How do you marry that? And I can say this because I'm a female. I think somehow housing those two things as a male is easier. I think with females, it's almost like we have to psych ourselves into, I can do this. Because I don't know that oftentimes it's as natural, because we have different mechanisms. You know this because you've coached women, and we'll get into that. So how did you house that as not negative self-chatter when you're competing?
First of all, I don't think we can completely control the thoughts that we have in our head.
Yes.
If you and I, it wouldn't make for a good podcast, but if we sat here for 30 seconds and each decided, I'm going to sit here without a single thought, I would fail at that, because some thoughts would come into my head. I probably got to go study at the base of a mountain in Kathmandu or something for 30 years to be able to clear my mind. But our brain just comes up with thoughts. And these thoughts and the things that our brain says to us, or our mind, in the middle of intense competition, I can have some negative thoughts about myself that if I said it to you or to a friend, you wouldn't talk to me for a long time. Like, we can be really hard on ourselves. So understanding that we don't control every thought, and to know it's natural and everybody has these negative thoughts come up. It's not that I can just squeeze so hard that they don't come up.
Yeah.
But instead acknowledge, I'm going to have I don't even call them good or bad. I call them less productive or more productive thoughts. And regularly less productive thoughts come up. Karch, you suck. You can't put a ball away. You are going to let your team down. You're going to whatever. And then I'm like, well, all right. Yes, that just thought popped in. But then you touched on it. I can think, how many thousands of hours have I trained this skill, done this, been challenged in practice? Of course I'm capable of doing that. Now let's go on. I'm not going to worry about that play. That play is done. And that's why this thought came up, because you can make horrible plays in an Olympics and still win an Olympic gold medal.
Yeah.
It's how we recover from those thoughts and reframe or recover from those bad plays. And the people who get through the tough stuff and on to influencing and helping somewhat control the next play, those are the ones who have the best shot at the result that they want.
Do you, as an athlete, do you recall having a redirect or a mantra that when you notice the thought and then, okay, whether you're serving or serve receive, that there was some cue to help you reorient?
I think lots of players will have something to help them like kind of laser back in on what is immediately in front of me. What do I have to do next? And for some players, let's talk volleyball, it might be a cue that they use for years. But for others, it might be this works for a few weeks, and then it's not. And then I'll try this one instead. Volleyball, the only skill in volleyball that you have complete control over is the serve. Yeah. So there are plenty of people, especially when they're younger and less sure of their abilities and learning, but lots of people go to the service line thinking, please God, don't miss this, or please don't do this, please don't do that, please don't screw this up. But of course, you're putting in your mind this idea of take out the please don't, and then it's screw this up, do that. So that's not generally a helpful mentality. So it's helpful to have a cue, like pop the ball, like something aggressive, nail the spot, whatever it is. There's 1,000 different cues. Every player will find something that works for her or him differently, but it's really helpful to have those, especially at the start of a play when you're serving or when the other team is serving and you have to be ready to receive that serve.
This podcast is brought to you by STEMRegen. So when I was a professional athlete, I learned that success isn't just about your training and training hard. It's about how well you recover. And that's why now I use STEMRegen Sport, and it's a breakthrough supplement that supports your body's innate repair system. So even though I'm not competing, I'm still training really, really hard. And the science on it, which is so important, is, first of all, your body's repair system is powered by stem cells. And this acts like your body's internal repair team. And these cells travel through your bloodstream to support tissue renewal and muscle recovery. So the more stem cells you have in circulation, the better your body can repair itself after intense activity. And STEMRegen Sport is clinically proven, this is important to me, to help. So with just 2 capsules, this NSF certified supplement triggers the release of an average of 10 million new stem cells into your bloodstream. And that's just within 1 to 2 hours. And that's a significant boost, giving your body the tools it needs to recover faster, even reduce muscle soreness. That's what I'm always getting, and improve resilience after workouts. It's not that I find it harder, but maybe just a little with time. So these are so helpful. So what's in it? The key ingredients, things like aloe macroclada and sea buckthorn berry, which I'm sure you've heard of, and they're both backed by science. So the aloe increases stem cell circulation by 80%, while the sea buckthorn berry boosts it by 40%. So together, they support stem cell migration to areas where your body needs repairs the most. So whether it is your muscles, joints, or tissues, the area that's most in need, that's where they go. I love that. So you can trust STEMRegen Sport. It's NSF certified, like I mentioned earlier, meaning it adheres to strict WADA guidelines for professional athletes. So it makes it safe for them, professionals, or people like me, householders, or anyone who's serious about optimizing their performance. You can take your recovery to the next level with STEMRegen Sport. All you have to do is visit stemregen.co, STEMREGEN.co, and you can learn more and start unlocking the power of your repair system today. All you have to do is use the promo code Gabby, GABBY20, and you will get 20% off your first order at stemregen.co. So you're a husband, you're a father, you're a coach, which coach is also, there's a bit, not only a coaching aspect, but a business aspect. So when you're in these scenarios, let's say you're in a tight situation, you've been married a long time, did you use, because I personally sometimes will use that skill to try to direct myself towards how I'm trying to respond. And I find it actually in the more personal situations, like as a mom, where I have more invested as a mom than I ever had as an athlete, or as a partner, right? Because you're talking about life. These are, high stakes in a different way. Did you use that also, your coaching? Did you use also that skill to help you in those moments? Because I think sport is just a great opportunity to practice for life.
Mm-hmm.
Did you find yourself using that skill where you were frustrated or scared, or you have a presentation and maybe you need to ask people to help fund a program to help you in times that you felt unsure, or even, I don't want to say scared, but I think we get scared in moments.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
There is no courage or bravery without being scared. If you're not scared of anything, then there's no courage to be found in that situation.
Yeah.
So I think every parent, if they care about, and almost every parent does care about trying to be a good parent.
Yeah.
One of my wife Jana, and one of our goals is to try to pass only 50% of our neuroses on to our children.
Yeah.
If every generation did that, then we'll be making some good progress. But we've all struggled as parents. It's really helpful to have a partner in that.
Yeah.
And we'll screw up. Luckily, and we'll make mistakes. We'll say the wrong thing. We'll be too tough. We'll be not tough enough. We'll be whatever. But luckily, as a team, we can help each other and get better. I don't know. What was an example? I was just talking to somebody the other day. I think somebody was talking about they have younger children, and sometimes, as kids do, they'll throw a tantrum. They'll really get emotional, and they're too young to have learned anything about emotional control and regulation. Mm-hmm. And so my wife and I were frustrated with that at some point with young boys, and I think we read a couple of good books on it and just helped detach a little in the sense of like our solution was we had a spare bedroom in our home, and that became the crying room, the tantrum room. So, and it'd be like, oh, I see you're really upset and you cannot stop crying right now. You are welcome to either, if you want to keep doing that, you can go into the crying room for a while and come on out when you're ready to have a normal conversation. Mm-hmm. Or you can get it together and stay with us. So things like that you figure out by trial and error, and you can't know everything as a parent. You can't really truly be prepared for it until you do it.
Yeah. And I would imagine it would be interesting for you as somebody who had a dad who had to flee his country to survive his life, and you starting very early into a pretty structured environment, being in sport, which I think takes care of certain things, to then conversely creating a whole different reality as a parent for your children. Were you able not to put your experience on to your sons? Because that's been something that I've really had to learn as a parent, which is, they're different people with a different destiny, and they are born into a different situation. I can't keep putting my template on them, because you had a very unique template. Were you able to do that, or did your wife help you with that?
Absolutely. We're a team. But I do think, for one, neither of us were interested in forcing our boys to play volleyball or do any particular sport, but we were interested in supporting them and encouraging them to try different things. So growing up, they played Little League baseball, they played some basketball, they played some soccer, did a whole bunch of stuff. They would goof around with me with the volleyball a little while, but they didn't actually choose to play volleyball until they got into kind of 8th and 9th grades. And but we both wanted it to be their choice, not our choice. And if they chose to, we're going to support them. And that's how I got into coaching, was that choice that they got into volleyball. And if they had not chosen ever to play volleyball, that would have been okay too. Want them to find things that they love, but also put effort in and try to be good at whatever, and truly throw themselves into whatever they try. Thinking of one year, one of our older boy, Christian, decided to play I think it was frosh soft football, because a couple of his friends were playing. And he was like, yeah, I'll give it a try. Great. So when he went in the line to get his equipment, they asked him, what do you play? And the question was like, are you a center? Are you a quarterback? Are you a tight end? What are you? And so he thought it was, what sport do you play? And he said, I play volleyball. so we still get a kick out of that one, that you're in line for football equipment. What do you play? Volleyball. So, but I love that he was exploring and trying some different stuff. And it wasn't a good experience, but he did have to stick it out, because when you compete to do commit to play a season, you play a season, and he'll learn from that. Even if it wasn't a good experience, there are things we have to do in life that aren't good experiences, and we figure out how to make them the best they can be.
I can't help but think when you talk about as a parent, because you are so successful as an athlete that you never had the need to live through your children. Because I see more and more, and you've seen it, the organized structure around sports. You've got club. You have so many. My mother barely knew what I went to college for on a scholarship. She was like, "Oh, that's nice, dear." I played 2 club tournaments my whole life. It was a whole thing. You fell into it. You did it because that was your pursuit. Um, what would you say?
Little shout out to Coach Cecile.
Oh, I just talked to Cecile. This is what, good coaches can change your life. And that's a real thing. So when I hear that, it's like the real difference of when you understand what it takes, and you understand better than anyone what it takes to be great, that unless you really genuinely love it, your dad could have brought you to East Beach and done all that. But if you didn't really love it, it wasn't going to happen to the level that it has for the duration that it has. And so understanding that, it almost like you got to skip that lesson as a parent. When you see now, because a lot of parents, when I told friends I was going to come talk to you, it's like, do you encourage kids to explore and try as many sports as they can, and then they land on one eventually? And I know it's hard to sort of pinpoint it, but would you, if you could sort of whisper into parents' ears, hey, just let them be. How would you invite parents to approach encouraging their kids to play sports, especially now at a time where they go, well, in 8th grade, you got to play, year round, and all these things that they're navigating.
I think you touched on one important thing, and that is the more successful athletically parents have been, I think the easier it is for them to not live or have big hopes for their kids, or live vicariously through what their kids do in their athletic career. And it's then harder the less athletic career that parents have. But I think it's really helpful to kids to try a variety of things. Mm-hmm. They will much more easily be able to find, I think it'll be more easy for them to find their best self in a given sport if they've tried a range of sports and then land on something they really like. They'll have passion for it that carries them through the difficulties of finding out how good they can be. I'm following, of course, a lot of men's college volleyball now. And
I bet you are.
On a level much closer than I have in the past. I've followed it, but now it's really important for my job.
You're really into it.
And having a conversation with a national team coach. There are plenty of foreign volleyball players who raise the level of men's college volleyball, players from Bulgaria and elsewhere. And I'm not going to name the country or the coach, but the national team coach is like, God, this guy is so good. It's so strange that here's this person who is really good at something. I would love him to play on our national team. He's really good, and he doesn't enjoy it. And it's like, I don't know how he ended up getting on that track, but I'm like, God, kind of a curse to be good at something that you don't enjoy. And so after college, he might just stop. Who knows? Even though he could pursue further and see how good he could become professionally and with his national team. So another benefit of trying a variety of sports is there are great lessons to be learned that can apply. I played a lot of soccer growing up. And I think it made me a much better volleyball player in at least 2 ways. Number one, in soccer, if you and I are on a team together, I have the ball and I want to move us forward and put us in a better position. Very often when I give you the ball, I don't want to give you the ball right to where you are. I have to put you in a space that's going to make you better and put you in a more advantageous position and maybe allow you to run to it and put the defender on you behind you. And now you have no defender or less defenders between you and the goal. So there's this thing of seeing space. In volleyball. We almost, if you and I are playing together, I'm not passing the serve to you. I'm putting it to the exact spot that's going to allow you to run to it and make your job easiest. And then you're not putting it to me, but you're setting it close to the net in the exact spot that's going to allow me to attack most effectively. Soccer is much like that. So I got this great lesson from that. The other thing is that when kids grow up playing a variety of sports, a variety of surfaces, anecdotally, I can't say it for sure, but I think it makes them less injury prone. Just to do different movements. Soccer involves different movements than volleyball, which involves different movements than baseball, which involves different movements than water polo or swimming or surfing. And to combine those, I think just leads to a healthier athlete who's not going to have as many catastrophic injuries, ACLs, all those kinds of things. So some huge benefits with a variety of sports.
Yeah, that repetitive trauma, I think people don't understand. And you, because you're an athlete, you understand because you've navigated injuries and things like that. You told a great story about your son played volleyball and he was on a team that didn't win, I guess, a set. And so your wife encouraged you at that point, like, hey, maybe you could just help him out. I don't know if it's like 2009 or before or something like that, right?
Yeah, 7 or 8, somewhere around there. Our son was on the high school team. They lost every match. They lost, I'm getting goosebumps again, 31 matches that season. But not only did they lose every match, they lost every set of every match. So they were 0-93. And just as a parent, we're like, God, we would love to see them get to 25 before the other team once had a 93 times.
Yeah.
One time they were up 20-10, but lost 25-23. We were thinking, okay, this is the time.
This is the day.
This is the day. It's going to happen. Didn't happen. So right as they lost that set, that game to 25, my wife said, you got to help them out, Karch. And I said, you know what? I would, if I can do something to help them get to 25 once in a while, maybe not win a match, but at least taste a bit of success, it'd be great. So I asked the school. They were kind enough to let me get involved, and that's what got me into coaching, was just this agony as a parent of seeing your kid go through the tough thing of 0, of goose egg, of bagel donut for 93.
The bagel. So I mean, I couldn't help but think, is that really the moment that's when you started getting into coaching?
That's the moment. Until then, I didn't think I had the patience for it. I was still competing a lot on the AVP tour. And I would do some camps and clinics and things like that, but I wasn't sure that I had the patience in me to work with a team or a group of people for a whole season of several months or more. And so they wrote me, and our kids joke about how that little tiny high school in a lower division in Southern California, apparently that's the route to become a national team coach and coach in the Olympics. But so it was I'm really lucky to have had that experience. Also, really importantly, even though my wife said you got to help them out, I wasn't going to jump in and just take over. We had to have conversations because there's the dad-son thing. And so they had to clear it. If they had said, no, I don't want you to coach, I would have said, great, I abide by what you do. But here's how we had to lay the ground rules. I'm not dad at practice, and I'm coach. And then when we get home, we'll do our best not to talk volleyball at all, unless you really want to. But we just so we could keep it family and parent and kids at home, and not rehash endlessly on the drive home or whatever.
That's a
So
lot of
ground
restraint.
rules.
That's a lot of restraint by you.
They had final veto, absolute veto power, but they were like, no way. We want you to coach.
So-
and we get the ground rules, and we're going to do that.
Dr. Karai, your dad,
Yeah.
when you would come home, drive home with him from the beach, and you started your volleyball career on the beach,
Yeah.
what was that separation established, or did it bleed over a little more, or was it a different thing because it wasn't, you already knew, hey, he's going to be professional. It was just kind of like, we're doing this thing together and we're going to talk about it, continue.
I'm trying to remember. I think we probably talked about all kinds of things. It was he worked really hard as a doctor all week, and so it was kind of dad and son time on the weekend. And so if you're in Santa Barbara and you drive to Corona del Mar to play a tournament, well, that's like 2 or 3 hours in the car on the way there. Tournaments at that time were 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, so we would stay overnight if we made the second day, which we often did, and then drive home on Sunday afternoon whenever we were done in that double elimination tournament. So I'm sure we talked some about volleyball, but we talked about other things, and it was just a really special time for me to have this time with my dad, because I was busy during the week with school, and he was super busy working, 80 hour plus weeks from Monday through Friday, and so that was our time together.
So you play beach tournaments, you play for your indoor high school team, you play for Al Skates at UCLA, win, go to the national team very young, win a few gold medals. And I think, you guys were the legs to get that program going and be really competitive. And then you get to a point where you say, okay, what's the next move? And then you go, at that time, the AVP was really flourishing, St. John and Randy, and money was coming in. You transition to the beach game, which is really your original game.
Kind of transition back to the beach game.
Which are, most athletes that were coming into the AVP were coming from indoor. Yeah. That was the feeder system. Beach volleyball was really so California oriented, and it was, Mangus and these guys who were playing. It's almost like it was its own separate, different game. So you come back to the beach. How was that transition for you to go from, 12 guys, international play? Now you're playing doubles. What was that like for you transitioning? Because people think it's the same game, but it's really quite different. Was it an easy transition? Was it fun?
It really was fun, absolutely. Growing up, I was fascinated and head over heels with volleyball. I still am. But when I was 15, I was glued to the TV during the Olympics. There was no YouTube, there was no internet, there was nothing. So I couldn't see live volleyball. I really wanted to see what it looked like at the highest level. I saw pictures, but I had no live video, no understanding of what it looked like. Glued to the TV day after day after day for the Montreal Olympics, and no volleyball. Get near the end, I think I almost missed the 5 minutes of volleyball with a bathroom break. They showed like 5 minutes of an epic final between Poland and the Soviet Union. I think it was the first 5-game, 5-set match in a gold medal final.
Wow.
Unbelievable. But the lesson there was, all right, USA was not in that Olympics. Neither the men nor the women qualified. And so we have to be good, we have to qualify, and we have to contend for a medal, and that's how it's going to be on TV. Mm-hmm. So part of the challenge, the gauntlet, was, all right, what can I do to help the USA men be good and qualify and contend for medals at the Olympics? Played a lot of beach volleyball, even played beach. My first 3 years on the team, when I joined the USA men, we were 19th in the world. We were crappy, lousy. We had to get a lot better. It was a year-round program. We had to train 11 and a half months a year, and it paid off. We got a lot better spending all that time together.
50 weeks a year you guys are together.
Yeah.
How do you
In San
survive
Diego.
that? How does your body survive that hard surface? Because I don't, people see volleyball players pinging around, but they don't realize it's hard on you. How did you, what was the training? How did you all handle that load of training?
That's a great question. And our coach, Doug Beal, great coach, didn't just coach that group. He coached us to an Olympics. And then Marv Dunphy took over. Doug went on to do other things. And then Doug came back to coach the men for the Sydney 2000 and Athens 04 Olympics. And I ran into Doug during that time, and he's like, Karch, I don't know what happened. I cannot train this team even a half as hard as what I put you guys through. So I'm not quite sure how to explain how durable we were. But one of the things was my first summer with the team, a lot of great beach players were on the team also. Mike Dodd, Tim Hovland, Randy, Sinjin. And so we would train really hard for 4 or 5 hours, maybe 3.5 hours, 4 hours of volleyball, then do plyometric training, then wolf down a lunch, and then didn't have anything to do in the afternoon. So we would go down, jump in the ocean with our indoor uniform on to wash it off in the salt water, lay it out in the sand, then play beach for another 3 hours. And high level, these were some of the best players in the world.
These are a bunch of animals.
Yeah. And there was something about just doing all of that and changing surfaces even the same day that I think made us somehow a little more durable. I don't think I had maybe my first knee surgery, just a scope or whatever, nothing major, till 45. That's almost unheard of.
Really?
Yeah. I did have a shoulder surgery like at 36, but even there, the amount of volleyball I did was far beyond what most people could imagine. But there's this, when you do that much, you build up this base level of, I think, endurance and durability. And the switching of surfaces. So then getting back, so if the challenge was helping the USA indoor men be really good and contend for medals, then once I had done that for a couple of Olympic cycles, then the challenge was how good could I be? What if I am a part of a team, which is only one other person on the beach, how good could we become, and can we dethrone the great team of Randy and Sinjin who dominated the second half of the 80s? And so that was then the challenge. On the indoor side, it was becoming really good, knocking Soviet Union off and taking over the top spot. And then on the beach side, it was, can we knock off the team that is the standard that everybody measured themselves by, that people switch partners all the time to try to find the combination to knock them off, and eventually was able to do that too. So there was always something to shoot for, some team to knock off, something to improve and be better at.
Is there a difference? Did you have to dig in a different part of your personality from indoor versus beach because there are less guys? It's a different rhythm of game. Did you have to use different sides of your athletic kind of IQ to transfer over between the two?
One of the things that was fun, especially at that time, the rules were a little different. It was side-out volleyball instead of rally scoring. Every serve scores a point. And the other big one was the court was bigger.
Yeah.
The court at that time was the same size as indoors. Then at around 2000, those two big rules came in, rally scoring and smaller court. But when it was a bigger court, the block played a little less of a role because there was more space to softly land and place the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a fun challenge because with different partners, different things might be needed. If I was playing with a little smaller player or a great defender like Adam Johnson, then maybe I need to be the blocker all the time. But if I'm playing with a great blocker, let's say I played a few tournaments with just a very few tournaments with like a Mike Whitmarsh or
Who's a big guy.
Tim Hovland,
Right.
who was a wonderful guy, Mike, bless his soul. Then I would leave the blocking to them and be the defender. And then playing with somebody like Ken Steffes, who was also really skilled at both, then we could just switch off, and it was to our advantage to kind of maintain our energy level and not have one person do all the blocking, but whoever was serving, the other person would do the blocking. So the fun in that was finding the role that would help the team best. And sometimes it was being full-time defender. Late in my career, when I was less capable physically, then I would try to play. Oh, you mean like in your
mid-40s, Karch?
Yes, in my mid-40s. Then I would play with people who would do most of the blocking, like Kevin Wong, like Mike Lambert, Brent Doble, people like that. And that helped me also because every serve was coming my way, so I would have to receive and attack hundreds of times a weekend. So it was helpful to be playing with a blocker who could do most of the jumping at the net when the other team had the ball. So maybe the fun in that and the challenge in that is, okay, what's needed from me with this team and with this partner?
Yeah. You coach your son's team a bit. You find yourself working with the USA women's indoor national team. I'm just curious, you did play volleyball a very, very long time at a high level as a professional, top 3 team in your 40s, like very competitive. What did you think you were going to do after volleyball? Because you had to think about it sometimes. We all know there's an expiration. At least it doesn't mean this is what's going to happen. But what did you think? Oh, I'll probably do this or that. What before you were coaching?
As I got into my 40s and into the 2000s, one of the, I didn't know, but one of the things that kind of fell in my lap, or just an opportunity that presented itself, was actually to get to work on television as an analyst with great friends and great guys like Chris Marlowe or Paul Sunderland. And so the next thing I know, I think it was around 2003. Beach volleyball is growing. People are getting really excited because Misty and Carrie are becoming really, really good. They are probably going to contend for a gold medal in Athens. And NBC asked me, hey, why don't you sit in the booth in a couple of tournaments that you're playing in, and if you don't make the final, then we'd like to have you sit in, and you could think of it as a kind of a informal audition. And so I did some of that, and so they asked me, based on the results of that, to become the analyst along with play-by-play Chris Marlowe for the Athens Olympics. And so that was really cool. And there were lots of beach tournaments. So in theory, if I were not active as a player, I could do that kind of work. It didn't pay a crazy amount, but it allowed me to stay involved in the sport I love on a different level. I was thinking of, as I'm studying the men's college indoor game now, I almost drove yesterday to Cal State Northridge to watch a Northridge versus Long Beach State match. But then I realized the same 2 teams are playing in Long Beach, closer to where I am, 9 days later. But it reminded me that as NBC asked me to do this, I learned, there's probably going to be somewhere between 22 and 25 million people watching when Misty and Carrie, goosebumps again, are going for a gold medal. I don't want to be a flop. I want to be as good as I can be at this
Yeah.
and honor what Misty and Carrie are doing and honor the Olympics that I venerate so much. And so Chris Marlowe turned me on to a broadcasting coach, a good guy named Lou Riggs, who lived right near Cal State Northridge. He's no longer with us, but he was a great coach, and I would bring my tapes or send them to him, and then he would give me lots of feedback and shred me up at the things I screwed up, but that's where the value of a coach comes in. Yeah. And I would make this long trip from San Clemente to Northridge. I paid him out of my own pocket, whatever his hourly rate was. NBC didn't pay that, but I'm like, I'm not going into this as a complete novice. This is the Olympics. There are 25 million people going to be watching. I've got to honor it and try to become much better, or try to be, again, attempt mastery or excellence at that. And so that was a great experience. So then I'm thinking I could be along those lines, but now I'm doing three things. I'm competing near the end of my career, I'm coaching the boys, and I'm working television. Yeah. And then got the opportunity to coach with Hugh McCutcheon on the women's side. And so it was a wonderful opportunity. Hugh coached the men to a gold medal in Beijing, and then decided after that Olympics, which had a component of horror for his family, as his father-in-law was murdered, the only person who died during the Olympics, a vicious attack, and his mother-in-law almost died, and his wife was right there in the middle of all that, unbelievably enough. So he decided to make the switch to women and to coach the women. And in that process, USA Volleyball was talking to a whole lot of people about becoming the next men's coach. One of the people they talked to, among many, was me. I consulted with Hugh and said, all I've coached is really high school. Yeah. And maybe a guest coach for a week or two here. I helped Hugh out while he took the team on the road, he and his coaching staff, and helped the guys who were training at home. And the bottom line is I appreciated his honest feedback, and that is, I'm not sure you're ready to make the transition. You've done so little coaching. Yeah. And I wanted to, I wasn't going to impose myself on the men's program. They deserved more. And so after that conversation, a few months later, he's thinking of people to be a part of his staff. We bump into each other on the same flight. And he said, I have a crazy thought. What if you become an assistant with the women? Convenient, because I could still coach our boys, finish coaching them through high school, living so close to the training center here in Anaheim. Yeah. And so that experience of assistant coaching for a few years then allowed me to be much better prepared to honor, again, the program to become head coach of the women once Hugh went to coach at the University of Minnesota.
So you take the women, they win a gold. It seems to be a theme with you. Which part of you, because when we're athletes versus when we're coaching, there's through lines, but there's different sides of ourselves. What's the difference of Karch the athlete and Karch the coach? What traits do you see differently that you developed as a coach to be effective?
I'm sure I'm stating the obvious, but coaching and playing are very, very different.
And most people that get to your level, very few. I mean, there's like one or two that can actually translate it over, because for a myriad of reasons, either it was easy for them, or they're, psycho, or whatever the things they are as athletes. They don't know how to structure practices and competition and bring out things in different types of athletes. So is it the organization and the psychology? Like, what is it that was so different that you had to develop as a coach?
First of all, I realized that I was swimming upstream. Most people who've had a tremendous amount of success as a player, that does not translate to
Yeah.
being a really good coach. Most of the great coaches are people who were on the bench and already studying and had to struggle with everything they could and
Yeah.
figure out, I don't know if it's hacks, but figure out the game and get the most out of maybe a little less physical ability, a little less this, a little less that. And then they become great coaches. Maybe they were the backup point guard on their high school team and they go on to be
Mm-hmm.
an amazing basketball coach. Because they spend less time on the court and more time studying, and they develop this great coach's mind. Also, when people who've played at a really high level, they just see the game differently and better than most see
Yeah.
it. And it can be very challenging on their patience. Like, how do you not see what I see? So it's easy to lose patience or to get mad. This is so easy. How did you not see that? But that's the thing, is it demands a level of patience that I wasn't sure I had at first. Also, I tried not to go into it thinking just because I was a great player that I know a lot about coaching.
Mm.
When I first started coaching, after talked with our boys and decided, yep, I'm going to coach them in high school. The first thing I did was sign up for a coaching clinic and sit in the first row and think of myself as a total beginner, which I was as a beginner coach, even though I knew a whole lot about volleyball. Went up to Pepperdine to Malibu to one of Marv Dunphy's coaching clinics, and still try to think of myself as a beginner and learner in some ways, and trying to continue to up my game because all coaches are asking their players to do the same. But it takes a whole different level of patience, and also the patience to know that you have a little less control, maybe a lot less control.
Mm.
And but there's this great power in, if we can help the people who are doing it on the court, the players and the team, when they figure stuff out and light bulbs go off, it's tremendously gratifying. But the best teams, in my opinion, and all the great coaches I played for, they weren't dictators who had this iron-fisted grip on our team. The best teams were teams where we were collaborating, and it wasn't coach here and athlete or team here, but that the team and the players had their hands on the wheel too.
Mm-hmm.
And because ultimately it's the players on the court who have to make the real-time reads and anticipation and decisions. And so I'm trying to help facilitate that. So in some ways it is tough and more difficult because there's less control, but it's also really rewarding when a team puts it together the way they and we, coaches, hope that they can, and try to foster that as we work together toward high performance.
You've won a ton as an athlete, and there's a satisfaction in that. What's the different satisfaction? Because you're not only helping other people win, but you are changing lives. We alluded to it earlier. Cecile completely changed my life. Does it surprise you, for example, in 21 when you, and I thought it was interesting that the indoor Olympics started in Tokyo in 64, and then here you are back in 21 winning a gold medal with the women in Tokyo. I thought that was pretty beautiful, full circle.
More goosebumps.
What is
awesome?
You're changing people's lives at this moment, not just your own as an athlete. Because being an athlete, it's a little bit of a selfish endeavor, differently. When you go home that night and you put your head on the pillow, it's like, what are you given as a coach that you actually didn't realize was so rewarding versus as an athlete?
I had talked about it all my time with the team. I started coaching with Hugh here in this building in early 2009. So by the time we get to the Tokyo Olympics, which start in the middle of 21, that's 12 and a half years. And I kept saying, we're here. I got to experience what it's like to stand on the top of the podium as a player for the men's team.
Mm-hmm.
And so we, with the women's team, we're here to keep hurling ourselves at that door until we break it down. And the women had won lots of medals, silver medals, bronze medals, lots of what most other countries would be thrilled about. And we were thrilled too, but we want to stand at the top too. Even though coaches don't stand on the podium, and even though most people don't realize it, but coaches don't get medals. Only the athletes get medals at the Olympics, which I'm not saying as a complaint. It's just it's a fact.
Uh-huh.
But the team earned that gold medal and had been working almost 60 years to break that door down. So it was something incredibly powerful, and it was an honor to have played a role in helping the women stand on the top of the podium and be the first group to have gold medals laid around their necks. The women are a really special group of people. Love them dearly as people and as players, and wanted them to taste the success that I have been able to experience as I played on the men's team. And so that was a huge thrill to be the first to accomplish something like that, to be a part of a program that finally stood at the top. And then really cool, as difficult as that is, to come back just 3 years later and be contending, playing in the final to try to win another one of those. We came up short against a really, really great Italy team that just buzzsawed through the whole tournament, every opponent they took down.
Yeah.
But a couple of some accomplishments to be incredibly proud of, and so really happy for the women's program.
Whenever I watch the Olympics and you see gold medal smiling, silver not smiling, bronze smiling, it's like silver's better than bronze, but somehow it is a very interesting thing when you see the bronze, they're elated, the gold is elated, and the silver is just like, okay.
Well, remember though that number one, the bronze medal team won their last match.
But that's what I know.
And
it's
that
just
was hours or a day or two before,
I
and
know.
they've had time to process. The silver medal team just lost 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And they were playing for a gold, and they came up short.
It's just brutal to see that when you see it. You just go,
It is brutal, but the most brutal thing, and you don't see that,
What?
is to play to the very end and lose the bronze medal match and win what they call the wooden medal and not be seen anywhere on that podium. That
is the worst.
Is the toughest, because you made the semifinals, you lost the semifinals, and then you're in the bronze medal match and you lost that one. And clearly, if you make the semifinals, you're capable of winning a medal, and you came up short, and you play the whole tournament, and you work for 4 years to come up this short from. So those are the frowns that we don't see, because there's not a place on the podium for that team.
So I'm just going to ask you some questions that they're curiosity questions. They may not be in sequence. But when you're coaching, how do you coach to inspire? And there's this fine line of burnout, right? Like these years you're competing in big tournaments. How do you create those spaces? Because it is very difficult to do. People don't realize it's hard. You know the smell of a gym, right? Like when you walk in the gym, that smell. You go, oh, here we are again. How do you find? Because you're very self-motivated and focused. How do you, as a coach, create that space? If your team, you go, these guys they're getting they're tired.
Good question. I think, first of all, we have to be really cognizant that players on the men's team, players on the women's team, they lead dual lives. They play for 2 teams each year. Mm-hmm. They play for a professional team for about 7 months until very recently outside the country in places like Japan, Brazil, Russia, Poland, Italy, Turkey, all across the world. And then they come home, they take a short break, and then they come to Anaheim to be a part of the men's team or women's team here and go after and join country versus country competition and try to win medals and represent our country at the highest level. So we have to be really careful about workload and things like that because of these dual seasons. They basically play too much, do too much volleyball each year. If they were a WNBA or an NBA player, they would have a real off season for at least a couple of months. Volleyball players, top players, and not just Americans, but Italians, Russians, Polish, Brazilian, Japanese, you name it. They do this a lot.
So are you working on, you're not doing then, let's say, reps. Are you talking about the concept of volleyball more and what you're trying to philosophically accomplish?
It's some of that philosophically. It's also some that you do have to do it, but we have to be careful about how much we do it because they do so much. They log so many hours already in the course of a given year. A lot of the men have been going at it since late September, and they'll finish their professional seasons all over the world somewhere in April or early to mid-May. That's a long season and a gnarly one and really demanding and intense. Yeah. So then they need a break, and then they come in here and we regroup. And so we have to figure out a fine balance of how much to push there. Also, just health-wise and physically, because if somebody has a big injury, every day that you can't train, you're falling behind. Yeah. So just availability is an ability. The ability to train every day is a skill that is really important. So we have to take great care of their health. We've got a great medical team and a great performance team, both on the men's side and on the women's side to do that, to stay in touch with them as they're doing their professional seasons, to especially be there for them if they're struggling through injury during those seasons. So we have to be very careful. Coaches always want to do more than their players can do. Even if their players' minds wanted to, we have to be smart and protect them so that they can do this year after year for years on end. So that we have to be very careful there.
You're a player who obviously played, like we stated earlier, into your mid-40s. What do you attribute your longevity to? And I know you were talking about, beach and indoor, and then certainly beach people don't realize. I feel like beach because you're barefoot and you use your feet, and the sand is harder to move in, but it's softer on you. I don't think most people wouldn't have an indoor career to the mid-40s. I think the beach surface attributed a lot to that. I think your ligaments and tendons, the fact that your feet are free, I think there's sort of something interesting about how strong you get. But what do you attribute? Because training was sophisticated. It's certainly become more sophisticated. Maybe it's almost, I don't want to say too sophisticated, but it's certainly everything is measured and there's sort of conversations around everything and they measure everything. But for you personally, besides maybe good genetics and good luck,
I think that is a part of it.
Yeah.
But I also think...
What did you do, or what were some of the things you were doing that really gave you that longevity?
Besides some luck, some genetics, I think it was playing on the soft sand and playing on the hardwood, that combination. I think you develop certain strength and power being barefoot on an uncertain surface. It is really difficult to jump high out of very soft sand. And it's a great workout, but it's also in some ways much easier on your body. Beach tournaments also are super, at least they used to be, playing multiple matches over the course of 2 days in really hot humid conditions. It's a test of endurance also that you don't necessarily find as much on the indoor side.
Did you have, were you hydrating a specific way? Were you eating a specific way?
Yeah.
I did hear a story, and I won't cut you off, is that you were doing this flexibility training. I feel like you were in your 30s, and I think the idea was like part of you got too flexible in certain ways, and you pulled back on some of that training because you said it wasn't serving you. So I was just curious if you had things that still you did then that athletes are still doing now.
I tried to be really as sophisticated as I could in my hydration, because hydration is a critical element of performance, but especially in beach volleyball, because if you're playing in Florida and it's 100 degrees and 98% humidity, you can lose so much fluids.
Yeah.
So I was a biochem major, and so I calculated it out. Like, what is the concentration of some key electrolytes like potassium, sodium in my bloodstream? And then figured, all right, the best way to get this is not with something like Gatorade. That can be fine, but there's a lot of sugar in Gatorade. So the best thing I could find was Pedialyte or something like it, meant for infants and little ones, especially when they're sick. But so then the way your body takes in electrolytes and any fluids you take best is if the concentration you drink is closest to the concentration that's in your bloodstream. So if you drink something that's really sugary, it's going to take longer to get through your stomach lining. Or if you just drink plain water, that too will take a little longer than if there's about the same level of potassium, sodium, things like that. So I figured out how to dilute Pedialyte. It was generally like a 3 or 4 to 1 thing. And then I would go through, probably in a really, really hot tournament, I might go through a couple gallons of that a day through 4 or 5 matches. But that was something where I would try to calculate on my own and be as sophisticated as I could, because hydration is a huge part of a really hot, humid beach volleyball tournament.
It would be probably a reasonable statement to say nobody was a volleyball player as long as you have been, or certainly and definitely not at the level, right? And what happens to a lot of people is their identity gets wrapped up into, Karch Karai, the volleyball player. And what I've heard over and over is that you take on new things, you're willing to be a beginner, you're willing to ask to be mentored, to get new skill sets, whether it's in coaching or broadcasting. And so obviously I think that mindset is really helpful. But was there a time, and you obviously went into other things, where you had to kind of manage? Because I see a lot of athletes go through this where it's like, well, who am I now? Did you have a time with that? And if you did, how did you work that out?
I think I'm really fortunate, but when people play a sport for a long time and they've had a good amount of success, it is a big part of me or her or him. It's a big deal. And it is a really difficult transition to find something new to pursue. They've worked really hard at pursuing being really good at that sport. And in volleyball, there's this huge team aspect of it, of battling together. And then all of a sudden, when you stop, you miss the team, you miss the connections, you miss the battle, you miss even feeling crappy when you lose a match that you shouldn't have, because you did it together, like you're all in the foxhole together, in a sense. And that is, I will never downplay how difficult that is for high-level athletes who then have to figure out, you mentioned it before, we all have an expiration date as competitive athletes. Can only do it for so long. And so then everybody has to go through that process of figuring out what's next. I'm really lucky to have been able to figure out a what's next that still allowed me in two different things, broadcasting and coaching, to stay in the sport that I love. Not everybody does that. And some people want to like shut that door and put it behind them and do something new. But it is not an easy process. Everybody has to find their own solutions. I think one of the things that makes it more difficult than it probably needs to be is that most people shy away from planning for that day.
Yeah.
Because if they start planning for that transition, they're afraid, understandably, that they're going to accelerate and bring that date of transition sooner. They're going to make it happen, and they're going to have to leave the competitive side of that sport sooner than they want to. But in reality, I don't think it works out that way. I think people are actually wise to fight that. And I don't know, let's say go to business school while they're still competing,
Yes.
Get an MBA, whatever it is, but do some things and keep your mind occupied and try to open some doors of possibilities and learn some things instead of getting to the end of your career.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to start exploring stuff, but it might take me 5 or 10 years to find out what is next going to ignite my hunger to pursue mastery or excellence at some new thing.
And I can't help but think it. You say the word. I think also taking all this energy that you have and having the opportunity to be masterful is as much almost the turn on as the execution as an athlete of winning. It's the learning, it's the growing, it's the improving. And I think
in a team sport to do that with other people.
Right. And so in sort of rounding the corner, you're going to be coaching the men's U.S. team. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm excited for them. Is there a difference? And I don't want you to be PC on this. I'm fascinated by this. Is there a difference? Do you take a different? And I'll tell you a quick story in coaching the women versus coaching men, because Gary Sato was my coach for a long time, and he worked with Marv, one of your coaches.
Yeah.
And he told us a story that he watched Marv say to you in a very stressful situation and to the team, you're going to da-da-da-da-da, we're going to give the ball to Karch. Karch, you're going to no, put it away, boom, boom. And he goes, and that's exactly the way it went down. And he said, he put that in his pocket. He thought, one day I'm going to have this chance and I'm going to do this. But it was with a group of women. And he said what was interesting for him to observe was in that moment, he isolated the player. He said he could tell instantly the team kind of went like this versus like that. And it didn't go down quite the same way, because he said for him, it was understanding in his experience in coaching men and in coaching women, it was a little bit of a different language. And so I'm wondering if there was anything that you learned in coaching that it's a nuance that you go, oh, my language is a little different here and there. Because what I have experienced a lot of times, a lot of times female athletes that grow up with a lot of brothers or playing with a bunch of boys, they learn that language quicker. It's almost like we have to be taught to be competitive, to almost be ruthless, but it's not personal. I really want to beat you on the court, but after, we could even get in a fight. Guys, you'll see them and then they're hanging out after. Girls, they hold it for years sometimes. So I was just wondering from your vantage point, because you are an expert at this, if there was a subtlety about revving these teams up and getting the best out of them in your language. And your wife must get a real kick out of it, right? You have sons, you play with guys, but then you're coaching a bunch of women.
You mentioned my wife, and she has been an unbelievably helpful resource and asset and mentor.
Because you didn't have daughters.
I did have younger sisters, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
babysat them a lot, and so having sisters
Yes.
definitely helps.
Uh-huh.
But no, I did not have daughters. So yeah, if I have questions, I'm confused, it's hugely helpful to have a wonderful partner in my wife to bounce ideas off of. First of all, in one sense, it's an identical approach, and that is I'm doing my best to try to coach people, not players. And
it's a beautiful differentiating point.
And so that doesn't change at all whether they happen to be people who are men or people who are women. And so a big part of my early time with this men's team is just getting to know these guys as people.
You have a great group of guys, though.
I do. And it's not like they're 19th in the world and they need a major overhaul. They were very close.
Yes.
They had a great tournament. Only lost one match in the semifinal, which means the best they could do was win a bronze medal. But they were capable of winning a gold medal. And that is really frustrating. I coached the women in Rio in 2016. The women only lost one match by 2 points to Serbia in the semifinal. They scored 101 points. We scored 101 points over the course of 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Fell a little short. The best we could do is win a bronze. Same thing happened with the men. But also in that semifinal match on the women's side in Rio and with the men in Paris, that was the one match, really heavy match, where they fell a good bit short of playing to their capabilities. So that's the big challenge, is when the stakes are massive like that, how do we play our best or close to it when our best is needed? So again, how do I start? I start by getting to know these people. And it is a great group of guys, just like the women are a great group of women. But to learn more about where they came from, about their sisters, brothers, family, parents, pets, all that stuff is just fascinating. I love listening, hearing their stories. How'd you get into volleyball? I love the answers that I hear. I ask this question a lot, and that is not who's your favorite coach, but what is something that is really impactful that a coach has said or done for you, something that maybe just hit you right between the eyes, like, oh. And it's fascinating how often their answer goes back to when they were 13, 14, 15, a club coach. Getting goosebumps again. So I love hearing those answers. Maybe one, it was, why are you struggling to, I believe in you, why are you struggling to believe in yourself? Or,
you know how women are probably a little more analytical? Is that an understatement? I know you can't say that. I can say that. There's a little more, we analyze a little more,
I think
right?
you do a lot of women, again, we're generalizing, but tend to be, to overthink things.
Yes.
And turn it over in their minds over and over again.
Well, it's biology, right? I think it's the
yep.
way it works. We're scanning always and trying to
Yep.
anticipate everybody's needs and everything. And sometimes in sport,
You're better nurturers, and you're looking to see how to help the people around you be better and take care of them.
It is kind of ironic. Like when I saw that you were coaching the women, I thought, of all the people, first of all, what a gift to learn from you. But you who, when to watch you as an athlete, it just seemed like, okay, business as usual. Here's the ball. Let's go. To then be coaching a group of women, is there something you learned as a person, as a man, as a coach, as a human, that you learned from these women that you are now, taking on with you?
Yes, and I don't know if there were a lot of surprises. Kathy DeBoer, who coached for many years and then was American Volleyball Coaches Association, AVCA, executive director for many years, did a lot of great things to help build the sport in this country. Wrote a wonderful book called Gender and Competition. And the thesis of the book was, I think she was sitting in the stands as a coach, recruiting, and a coach, a friend of hers next to her, sitting next to her, a male coach, said, "Why aren't women competitive?" And she's like, "What the hell are you talking about? They are competitive." And so that got her thinking, I am going to explain how women are competitive, just as competitive as men, but they tend to manifest it in a different way. Yeah. So, for example, men maybe compete and then connect, and think of it more like a pyramid. I'm trying to climb to the top of this pyramid, and women maybe think of are feeling best and most accomplished when they're part of a spider web and connected with everybody around them, and really powerful trust built between all the component parts. So she tells wonderful stories in there. So I had read that years before as I was just getting into coaching, and just because I heard it was a good book and it's helpful to learn. I think there was a story in there. One of the great coaches of all time, Anson Dorrance, who coached University of North Carolina soccer and won something like 21 or more NCAA titles. He's always looking to get better, and in the before practice, it kind of used to drive him nuts. The women would sit there and kind of stretch, but really they were talking about their day, what happened in this class, what'd your boyfriend say to you, whatever. There was this socializing time, and he's like, I am sick of this socializing time. We're going to put this to good use. So he put in this whole program, and it was all structured and organized. And they're like 4 weeks into the season, and they're playing like crap. And he's like, what's the difference? The only thing I changed was I eliminated the connection time. Yeah. And he figured out that was a mistake. I need to give them this time where they get to, as they're the sentinels, we're looking out for everybody. Yeah. They get to report on how the day went. That's one of the favorite parts of my day, is when I finish a good, hard day of work and go home and have dinner with my wife, and I get to hear about her day, and she gets to report on everything. And I love that time. So Kathy pointed out a lot of things. Like Anson Dorrance, another thing he would talk about is, because he coached men and women. First he coached men, then he coached both, then women for the bulk of his career. But
that's what he gets.
So if he were with a group of men, practice isn't going well. Get in here. We're going to talk about this for a second. You know, you're screwing this up, and you're doing this, and you're doing that, and he's just laying into him. He's saying every guy there is thinking he's talking to everybody but me. Yes. But if he does that with a group of women, every woman is saying, he's only talking to me. I'm the one who's screwing up. I'm terrible. And everybody else is doing great. Like, they take it really hard on themselves. Of course, generalizing.
Yeah, of course.
But so there's a very different balance there that is helpful to be cognizant of as a coach. But ultimately, still, the commonality is we're doing our best to work with people and coach people, not players.
Is there some kind of full circle for you now that you're coaching the men indoor? I mean, it's pretty. I think it's very poetic.
I have, as I became coach, almost all of the men, all but one of the men, were already gone, were already outside the country with their professional teams. So most of my interactions have been over FaceTime, although I did make a big world tour and just kept going east and went to France and Italy, Germany, Poland, Turkey, Japan, and back to LA to check in with everybody live. But I have yet to coach a practice with a lot of guys, yet to coach a match. So I will learn as I go. I think of this as another great big challenge and learning opportunity. But so far, it's been getting to know people, and then I'm going to be really excited when we get to work together in the same gym.
Do you ever get nervous?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah. I get nervous before every match. I think, number one, when you get a little nervous, your palms get a little sweaty, your skin temperature or your temperature rises, whatever. That is actually biologically your body is, if it didn't do that, you wouldn't be as prepared for battle.
You're ready.
You're ready.
Yeah.
And secondly, it shows you care.
Yeah.
So if I didn't get a little nervous, I would be really worried. Going into an Olympic quarterfinal match, yeah, I get a little nervous, but it's like, yep, great. That I would be worried if I weren't.
So my final question is, a lot of times you'll hear people talk about modern day athletes, even it's not only do they have more pressure and they have to get specialized earlier, but then if they go to college, there's sort of like, okay, you've got the portal, you have NIL deals, it's all this stuff. What's your take on this for these athletes? Is it ultimately going to, how do you think it's going to impact the sports, the games themselves?
Let's see. So I think you're asking kind of the upbringing now.
They sort of say, old versus new, and I don't like that. I just sort of mean it from an educational point of view of, okay, modern day athletes have more to deal with.
Yeah.
They just do. They have the telephone, they have social media, they have distraction, they have to get specialized sooner, but then they have more leverage and power, right? In our day, I mean, you did what your coach said, and you weren't trading, you weren't doing all these things. You definitely weren't making money in college. I'm just wondering what you think net, how it will impact the athletes and the sports.
I think they face different challenges now than when I was growing up. I'm really thankful that there were no devices, no social media. I feel like I have this ability to have a deep focus for a much longer period of time. It's nobody's fault. It's just that I would have less ability to focus if I grew up with Twitter and Instagram and all of those things and flipping through. I much prefer to read 1,000-word or more article with some really deep insights than to read 140 characters on an X feed or whatever. So that's just the way I grew up. So I think the challenge is we ultimately still have people, but they grew up in a different set of circumstances, and so we'll try to find the best route to help facilitate, guide, support people becoming the best versions of themselves as people and as volleyball players, understanding that things are a lot different and there is social media and they're much more attuned to what other people think. So maybe another challenge is how to help them thrive best in that versus I grew up and I didn't have to worry about what anybody thought. Those voices never even were available to me, even if I wanted to seek them out, which I don't. But it's a different set of challenges, but one where it's fun to try to pick the lock on.
Yeah, I would imagine maybe in the next few years we'll start to figure out systems and ways that we can support and protect the athlete and continue to elevate the game. You've said in a number of interviews that your goal was always to be the best person, man, husband, father, volleyball athlete, son, all these things. And I think you are you have done that in every way. And two final things. Your U.S. men's volleyball team broke my diving board, just so you know. D'Agostino.
Kyle Dago,
he
what
did.
happened?
They came to pool train. I just remembered this. And they were messing around, jumping so hard, trying to generate force.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of athletes, so they're really doing good.
Yeah.
They're the first group that can break my diving board.
I'm gonna have to tell Dago and give him crap about that one.
Dad is the one who I played 2 club tournaments for and pulled me aside, Randy, and said, "You know what, kid? I think we should teach you middle blocking steps." A few months before I went to Florida State, this is how green I was. We were working on middle blocking steps.
Oh my gosh.
So it's full circle. So they broke it. And then my second...
Kyle has really powerful things to share about what his dad has meant to him in his career. And it was really cool because on my world tour, I got to meet his dad and watch... his dad was visiting him, and we both got to see them play a high-level Champions League match in Berlin.
Yeah, and he's obviously very dynamic. He broke my diving board. And I've had linemen from NFL and everything else. And then finally, when I was getting ready for this, I saw a picture of you and your wife, and it's one of the only few pictures of you. And you were hugging. And I thought, what I saw, I said to my husband, I said to Laird, I can see in this picture how much you love your wife. I could see it. And so here's this person. For me, my experience is like, Karch, behind the glasses, the pink hat, business as usual. And I really appreciated that you have figured out the way to be best at what you do and have a real life and figure that out, because most people don't figure that out. And I know she's the other side of that, of course. But for me, that is the true thing to aspire for, because you can be great on a court, but can you be great in life? And that was just really obvious.
Well, thank you for sharing that. My biggest hope for any of the people I coach or work with is not to win Olympic gold medals, even though that is a big hope, and that's a big job of a national team, a USA national team. But my biggest aspiration for anybody I work with, collaborate with, is for them to find what I've been able to find. My favorite person ever is my wife, and she would say her favorite person ever is me. And so if you can find your favorite person ever and go through life with that person as a teammate, there's nothing better. And so that is my biggest hope for anybody I coach, more than how far they can get volleyball-wise, is because, of course, that goes so much farther in life. And then the other thing I guess I'd say is maybe people fall into a couple of different camps. And one camp is what can the world, or what should the world do for me, or how should the world be useful to me? And then there's the camp that says, how can I make myself most useful to the world and most useful to the people around me? And so I'm trying to put myself in that camp. So I don't know, I go home at the end of the day, and but I do think of it as a little like that. I have to earn my wife's love every day.
Yes.
And so I joke, okay, where's the trash? I got to take out the trash. I got to earn my keep again today
But that's everything.
Yes.
In life.
Absolutely.
When you step on a court, when you step in an office, when you show up in your personal life.
Try to earn it.
Earn it every day.
And make myself useful.
Coach Karch, thank you so much. I wish you and your team great success, and I just really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. And since you're in Southern California, hopefully we'll get to see you at any home matches, but especially 3 years from now at the LA Olympics.
100%. I'll be there.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for spending some time with me. Hopefully you got something out of it. If you did, feel free to share it with your friends, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And also, I want to hear from you. Tell me what's working, what's resonating with you, and how you're getting it done. Keep going.